This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
In June of 2025, a 17-year-old girl in Georgia slid into the DMs of true crime TikTokers. The message was simple. Search up Brock case. That's the message. The creator asked for clarification. Brock Turner? Brock who? And the girl replied, Kristen and James Brock. They're my parents. Out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came into my house with me and my 5-year-old sister and shot my parents brutally, leaving them for me and my little sister to wake up to. That was the message. She wanted coverage. She wanted attention on the case. She wanted a true crime content creator to shine a spotlight on her mother's unsolved murder. Okay? 1 month later, that same girl, Sarah Grace Patrick, turned herself into the Carroll County Sheriff's Office. She's now charged with both killings. Here's what we need to talk about. As of right now, the state of Georgia has released almost none of the evidence they claim to have. We keep using this phrase, mountains of evidence. They say they feel confident. They say investigators are certain. But they haven't shown us anything. Okay, maybe you do have mountains of evidence, but what is it? And we're going to find out. This trial starts in early January. It's going to be the first one that we're covering of 2026, if everything stays on track, which it appears to be. There's no murder weapon. It's never been recovered. No disclosed motive. No forensic evidence made public. No witness testimony released. Just a spokesperson at a podium telling us to trust them. We got her. Okay, but what do you got her with? And if history has taught us anything about the American justice system, it's that we should never just trust a prosecutor without receipts. So let's actually look at this case, both sides of it, because there's two very different stories that could explain what happened in that house on February 20th of 25, and right now we don't have enough information to know which one is true. Okay? If you've not heard this story, this is going to be a great grounding for you. It's going to explain both sides. I'm not taking a side here on this at all, because the answer is quite simple. I don't know what happened. You don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happens, and there's very little evidence that has come out to point in one way or another. That's the reality. So let's examine this together, shall we? And I want to get your thoughts in the comment section. And anything is fine. I mean, you can sway one way or another. Give me your thoughts. That's what opinions are all about. So in the comment section on YouTube, I'd love to hear it. And be sure to press subscribe while you're there as well, so you don't miss our coverage of this, because we're going to be bringing this trial as it comes about. So on the morning of February 20th, Kristen Brock, 41, and James Brock, 45, were found shot to death in their bed in a rural home on Tyus Road. It's just outside of Carrollton, Georgia. The person who discovered the bodies wasn't Sarah here. It was her 5-year-old half-sister, Jaylee. That little girl walked into her parents' bedroom to see why they weren't awake yet. And she found them. She ran to get Sarah. Sarah called 911. There were no signs of forced entry. The one door was left slightly ajar. Nothing was taken. The murder weapon was not at the scene. Now, here's where two narratives diverge. Let's go through it. Let's go through the state's theory first. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office believes Sarah Grace Patrick killed her mother and stepfather while they slept, let her 5-year-old sister find the bodies, called 911, gave a eulogy at the funeral, posted grieving videos on TikTok for months, and then they say, bizarrely, reached out to true crime influencers asking them to cover the case. I don't know what's really bizarre about that. If you're a 17-year-old girl and you have an unsolved mystery of your parents, and it doesn't seem there's really any sort of movement going on in the investigative standpoint, who are you going to call? true crimers. We should have a song, shouldn't we? Essentially drawing attention to a crime she allegedly committed. That's their theory. And that's what they're asking us to believe. And maybe they're right. Maybe they have the evidence to prove it. But as of today, they haven't shown us any of it. What they have shown us is this: Sarah's social media activity, her TikTok posts, her eulogy, her comments and videos about the case, the fact that she reached out to influencers, the fact that she allegedly wrote that coverage of the murders would be a really big hit. And I'll be honest, some of that does, I don't know, might look strange. The "I should prob delete later" caption that she never deleted, the comment on a speculative video saying the killer most definitely knew the house, the length of the eulogy, the way she ended it with "I'm sorry," it's raised some questions in some people's minds. But keep in mind, you're talking about a 17-year-old. Strange behavior is not evidence of murder. Grief looks different on everyone. And a teenager who grew up in the TikTok era, turning to social media to process trauma or try to get attention for her mother's unsolved murder, isn't proof that she pulled the trigger at all. It's proof that you're very out of touch with society and young people if you think that that looks strange. Because to several generations, that's how life works. So let's look at the other side. What if Sarah Grace Patrick is exactly what she appeared to be in those videos? A teenager who lost her mother and was trying to cope. Let's look at the context. Sarah had a complicated history with that household. At 11 years old, she told police she felt unsafe in her mother's home. She submitted a handwritten note to the court begging to live with her father. The reason? According to custody filings, her mother's boyfriend at the time, James Brock, was on probation for drug offenses involving meth and marijuana. Yeah, might not be the place you want to go hang out or live and feel safe. Folks that, have charges for meth might not hold the best company. The best folks might not be coming and going from that house, especially when you're a 16, 17-year-old girl. Sarah told police she was aware drugs were being used in the home. But keep in mind, this happened when she was 11. Back then, she was saying this. Her father, Danielle Patrick, filed an emergency custody petition in 2019 alleging that Kristen and James were exposing the children to meth and marijuana. The petition was initially granted. Sarah went to live with her dad, and then 5 days later, it was overturned. She was sent back. Just how our court system works so lovely when you find out that there might be meth in the house. Hey, let's send more kids there. One court said, this is not a good idea. Well, another court said, it's A-okay by me. By 2022, the dysfunction in that house had escalated to the point where James Brock accused Kristen of trying to run him over with a car while he was standing in the front of a barn. A child was in the car. Sarah witnessed the whole thing. James accusing Kristen of assault with intent to kill, accusing his wife, accusing Sarah's mom. Then he dropped the charges. And they got married the following year, like you do after the person that you're in love with tries to allegedly run you over. And there's an alleged history of meth. So this is a household Sarah was living in, a home with a documented history of drug use, a dropped attempted murder allegation between the adults, court-ordered therapy, and years of custody battles. This isn't a Norman Rockwell painting. It's called chaos. And here's something else worth considering. James Brock had a criminal history. According to those same custody filings, he was on probation for meth and marijuana offenses when he entered Sarah's life. Sarah's own grandfather, Dennis Nolan, who was also Kristen's father, has publicly stated to News Nation that James' criminal past may have played a part in his death. Shocking. What a crazy statement to make. Someone that's into the meth world may have been killed by someone in the meth world. But the state of Georgia wants you to think it might be the daughter, the stepdaughter. Again, we don't know the evidence. I'd love to hear the mountain of evidence. Just give us a little bit of that mountain of evidence. Most cases we do see these sort of things before a trial actually goes to trial so we can understand what the hell it is you're talking about and why you've arrested a young woman who, if innocent, has already been traumatized to the nth degree. But again, they didn't arrest her for nothing. At least we hope. We've seen so many cases where they do arrest people for nothing. I guess it would just be even more enraging if it's a minor female. But we'll find out. Like I said, I don't know, you don't know, we all don't know, and we'll all find out soon enough. Now, Nolan has obvious reasons to point elsewhere. His granddaughter is facing life in prison, but he's also the victim's father. He lost his daughter in all this, and he's still raising questions about James's past. People with histories in that world can make enemies. Debts go unpaid, deals go sideways. We don't know what connection James Brock may have had from his past. Maybe he was all cleaned up and nothing was going on. But again, the state hasn't told us any of it. All we can go off is what is documented history. What we do know is that Sarah told her biological father about other friends of the family she suspected could have been responsible. That's according to Daniel Patrick himself in an interview with Newsweek. And the sheriff's office has acknowledged multiple times that the investigation remains open and additional arrests are possible. If they were certain Sarah acted alone, why are you leaving that door open? So what do we make of the TikTok behavior that seems to be what the state is hanging their hat on publicly so far? Let's talk about it, because this is what seems to be fixated on. And it feels like there's a giant generational gap here in what people understand as normal behavior and abnormal behavior. And maybe it's healthy behavior versus unhealthy behavior, or just a giant generational shift in how people process and deal with things. Not making it right or wrong, but just, yeah, it may be foreign to you, but it doesn't mean that the person's a murderer. Sarah posted emotional videos after her mother's murder. She cried on camera. She asked for prayers. She reached out to true crime creators, asking them to cover the case. She commented on videos speculating about who the killer might be. The state sees this as evidence of guilt, a calculated performance designed to deflect suspicion. But consider the alternative. What if it was real? What if Sarah Grace Patrick, a 16-year-old who grew up in instability, who had a difficult relationship with her mother's household, who may not have had particularly warm feelings towards her stepfather, what if she genuinely wanted her mother's murder solved? What if she wasn't extremely heartbroken over the fact that he was gone? Maybe that conveys on camera a bit. Maybe there is a little extra acting going on. Doesn't mean you're a murderer. I mean, society's looking at you going, well, she better be so sorry and feeling horrible about this death. When, you know, if we don't know what was going on in that house, we know that, again, didn't have the best of seeming relationships here with stepdad, or had issues at least one point in time. If that maintained itself, if that went on for quite some time, whether it was this next, however many years that was, 5-6 years, and that person suddenly dies, maybe at the hands of someone else, well, you don't always have to be sad. Reaching out to the true crime TikTokers is not inherently suspicious. It's actually how a lot of cold cases get attention these days. It's how families generate tips. It's how public pressure builds. If you're a teenager in 2025 and your mother's murder is going unsolved, going to TikTok isn't crazy. It's actually the logical move. And the comment about this being a really big hit on TikTok. That's how people talk about viral content. It doesn't mean she's excited about her mother's death. It could just as easily mean she understands how the algorithm works and wants a maximum exposure for an unsolved case. And for not being emotionally devastated about James Brock specifically, let's be real. She's not obligated to grieve for a stepfather who, according to court records, was on probation for meth when he entered her life. Who was part of a household she told police made her feel unsafe, and who stayed with her mother even after accusing Christian of trying to kill him. You can mourn your mother and feel complicated about the man who was lying next to her. Those two things can coexist. People have made a lot out of the eulogy. It was long. It was scripted. It ended with, "I'm sorry." The sheriff's spokesperson said it seemed odd and felt more like a speech. Well, here's the question. Have you ever given a eulogy for your own parent at 16 after your 5-year-old sister found the bodies? Some people write long eulogies because they're trying to hold themselves together. Some people script every word because they're terrified of falling apart. Some people say, "I'm sorry," because they feel guilty, not for committing a crime, but for being alive when someone they loved is dead. Survivor's guilt is real, especially for a teenager who was in the house that night and didn't hear anything, didn't stop it, didn't protect her little sister from walking into that room. "I'm sorry" could mean 1,000 things. Treating it as a confession is a choice the investigators made. It's not proof of jack shit. I'm waiting for your evidence because everything you've listed publicly doesn't mean shit. Sarah Grace Patrick is 17 years old. She's being held without bond in the Carroll County Jail in isolation because of her age. Her trial is set for January 5th, 2026. We will cover it right here. She's charged with 8 counts, 2 counts of murder, 2 counts of malice murder, 2 counts of aggravated assault, and 2 weapons charges. Her defense team has retained a forensic neuropsychologist who evaluated her. That report is expected after Christmas. Her biological father maintains her innocence. Her grandfather, the victim's own father, maintains her innocence. Her friend showed up to the bond hearing in "I Stand With Sarah" t-shirts. Her pastor testified that she called him from jail. She called him from jail to pray. Meanwhile, James Brock's family believes she did it. They testified against her bond. His sister said she fears for her safety. His son called his father by Superman and said Sarah would flee if released. The family is split. The community is divided, and the state still hasn't shown us what they actually have. That's where it sits. Maybe Sarah Grace Patrick killed her mother and stepfather. Maybe she did it for reasons we don't yet understand. And maybe the state has evidence that will make that clear when it's presented at trial. But maybe she didn't. Maybe she's a teenager who grew up in a troubled home, who didn't have a great relationship with her stepfather, who lost her mother to violence, who turned to the only platform her generation knows, social media, to try to process her grief and to get attention for an unsolved crime. Maybe someone connected to James Brock's past came to that house that night. Maybe there's a thread investigators haven't pulled or have pulled and haven't disclosed. We don't know. And that's the point. The state is asking us to convict this girl in the court of public opinion based on TikTok behavior and a eulogy. They're asking us to believe she's guilty because she acted strange through the prism of 50-some-year-olds when looking at a teenager in 2025. Yeah, I got news for you. Pretty much everything they do seems a bit strange. But you're not a teenager in 2025. They keep saying mountains of evidence. Sounds great. Without showing us a single rock from that mountain. I am not saying she's innocent. I'm saying I don't know. and neither do you, and neither does anyone else who hasn't seen the actual evidence. What I'm saying is this. We've seen this movie before. We've seen prosecutors stand at the podiums and tell us they're confident. We've seen cases built on circumstantial evidence and public pressure. We've seen teenagers tried as adults, convicted in the media, and sent away for life, only for the truth to come out years later. If the state has what they say they have, they'll show it at trial. And if Sarah Grace Patrick is responsible for this, she should be held accountable. But if they don't, if this case is built on vibes and TikTok clips and a 17-year-old's messy public grief, then we need to pump the brakes on the rush to judgment. Because right now, the only thing we know for certain is that 2 people are dead, a little girl found their bodies, and a teenager's life hangs in the balance. The trial is set for January. Maybe we'll get answers then. Until we do, I'd be careful about deciding you know what happened in that house. Because the truth is, none of us were there. And the people who are supposed to prove it haven't shown us a damn thing. Your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. Would love to hear them. Go for it. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi to find us, and you can comment there. If you're listening to us on the podcast platforms, thank you very much. If you don't mind, if you're on Apple Podcasts, leave us a review, a couple kind words. Greatly appreciated. Helps us quite a bit in the rankings and lets other folks find our community and be part of it just like you. So please, if you're liking this, that would be so much appreciated. Thank you so much for your time on doing that. Until next time, my name is Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.